right, well, we will get started. Happy weekend to these festival goers who are finally home. I'm Rebecca Green. I'm the founder of Dear Producer. I want to thank you guys all for coming out on a Saturday afternoon. I haven't done a webinar since my 2023 panel. I felt like there was just so many you had to choose from and the space was overcrowded, so I took a break. But I feel like the Sundance webinar is really important because very few people get to go to Sundance. It's often cost prohibitive. That's why I didn't go this year. But a lot of really important industry conversations happen on the ground. And so I wanted to host this roundtable with these fantastic producers so that everybody could get a sense of what was going on and be a part of those conversations, even if you couldn't attend in person. So want to welcome these amazing producers. They're all exhausted. They all just got home. Alisa literally just walked into her house. And so we appreciate you so much for being here. Just to quick, and they'll introduce themselves, but we have Colleen, who produced Life After, which was in the US documentary competition and won the US Documentary Special Jury Award. Congrats on that. Chester produced Move Your Body, The Birth of House, which was in premieres. Roger produced BUNNYLOVR in US Dramatic Competition. And Alisa produced The Perfect Neighbor in US Documentary Competition, which won the Directing Award for US Documentary. I will put a link to everyone's bio in the chat. I'm not going to go over everyone's bio and waste that time. Rather, we can just dive right in. I'll encourage everybody to use the chat. Feel free to talk and have your own commentary as we're talking. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and I'll keep an eye on that and try to get some of your questions in before we wrap up. So I would love to start if each of you could just tell us what your film was about. And I would love if you could just sum up your festival experience in one word or two words, one or two words. So we'll start with Chester. Tell us what your film is about.
My film, hey everybody. My film is about the birth of house music in Chicago house music in particular. We follow our main participant, Vince Lawrence, as in the 70s, he was an usher at Kaminsky Park when 50,000 white kids came in and destroyed disco records and just Black music that was personal to him. And it was led by Steve Dahl. But little did they know, Vince, an usher that night, was saving up for his first synthesizer that he would use to make the first house song and produce the first house record. And that's what our film is about, resilience, essentially, in a segregated city. But my Sundance experience, I think it was fabulous, I guess. That's the word I would use.
That's a great word. Thank you. Colleen?
And thank you for having me, by the way.
Of course.
Hey everyone. My film, and sorry in advance, I'm predictably came home from Sundance feeling quite under the weather, so sorry in advance. My synapses are not firing at their fastest. My film is about the intersection of assisted dying and disability, and it problematizes the sort of given progressive point of view around the issue, which is seen as an issue of bodily choice and autonomy, and looks at the ways that true autonomy is really limited in our society, which is ableist, deeply capitalist, racist, and looking at sort of the moral dilemmas around the issue when looked at through the lens of disability, specifically. It's directed by Reed Davenport. I would say that my Sundance experience, I'm taking this from another producer I spoke with at, in the midst of it, and who was doing a lot of compartmentalizing. I think that that's what it requires to sort of get through Sundance, but particularly in this year. Sundance always feels like the epitome of like cognitive dissonance on so many levels. And I think for me this year, it's my first feature as a lead producer ever, and so it was like full of so many firsts and excitements and like fears and all of these things, and to be recognized with an award in this way is just overwhelming. And it's also like the scariest time in the industry ever. And like it's felt like that at many different points up to this point, but it feels like it's just so undeniable right now. So I'm like really excited to be in this space in the community with all of these producers, all of you talented producers who have been doing this probably mostly longer than I have. But yeah, it felt like a lot to hold. So that's what my experience was.
Yeah, to have your first feature also be a Sundance movie is a lot. So, you know, I had a Sundance film, but it was like 5 movies in. And so it's a big accomplishment. Roger?
Hey everyone. Thank you for having us, Rebecca. I'm really excited to be chatting with you all today. I produce BUNNYLOVR, which is the narrative film amongst us panelists here. It's about an Asian American cam girl who's balancing a really pushy client who's trying to come into her life with adulation, money, and then a living bunny that he sends her in the mail, and reconnecting with her estranged father that she hasn't seen in about 15 years. So it sort of bounces back and forth between all these different types of transactional relationships as she's sort of coming into a better sense of herself in the Bushwick party scene. If I just put Sundance into one word for us, I think I would go with like celebratory. You know, like it's so hard to get into Sundance. Like the numbers are just so not in your favor that, and we were going as a sales title, we were going with all you know, to say, you know, let's just like celebrate this moment because it's so hard to get here. Whatever else happens from here can be icing on the cake, but this enough is such a triumph that let's enjoy it and not take anything for granted and be really present within whatever is happening in this craziness. But yeah, that's us.
Great. I'm teaching at the University of Michigan right now, and so I always give students the stats that you have a better chance of getting into Harvard than you do you're moving into Sundance. And like just kind of puts it into perspective for everybody and the level of accomplishment it is. Yeah. Alisa?
Thank you, Rebecca, for having me. Thank you for putting me in this company with these other producers. My film is The Perfect Neighbor, and it is a personal story. My director, Geeta Gandhabir, who I am a personal friend with and a producing partner with, her husband's sister's best friend was killed by a woman in Florida through a locked metal door. And through the use of body cam footage, and because this was a premeditated murder, and the murderer actually called the police so much to set up the murder eventually because of stand your ground laws, you get to see a really beautiful portrait of a community, and you understand like what is lost after someone does something so horrible as kill their neighbor because the children are playing outside and she doesn't like it. And to sum up my Sundance word, I'm a newbie, so it was brand new.
That's great. Such fascinating movies. I have not seen them all yet, but quite a distinct lineup. I want to just jump into the tough conversation first. You know, Sundance, the reason why Sundance is such the festival it is, both is for the discovery of talent, of course, but it is the premier place to sell your film if you don't have distribution. It has always been that for US independent films. And as the market's been shifting, that's been shifting as well. And so, you know, we're at the end of the festival now, and there have only been 2 acquisitions. Train Dreams with Joel Edgerton and Felicity Jones was picked up by Netflix for high teen millions, it was reported. And Together from Midnight Section with Dave Franco and Allison Brie was picked up by Neon for 15 million. There were 2 films bought just before the festival, and 13 films came in with distribution. And so, but the comparison is the last 2 years, by this point, there was at least a dozen sales announced. And so it's quite a stark difference. And so I want to, you know, hear from each of you, you know, what conversations were you having on the ground, you know, with your teams and sales agents, with other producers about the slow sale. That's not to say the sales aren't going to come, right? It's not over. It sometimes takes much longer than people think. And, you know, there's been a bit of commentary on why this is this just an off year, or is this reflective of the market? And would love to get your thoughts. I'm going to put in the chat, the IndieWire keeps a running list of sales that you all can take a look at. But Roger, do you want to jump in first?
I would love to. So yeah, I mean, we were kind of bracing, you know, if you look at the tea leaves over the last few years, I feel like that's been kind of the trend. It's like there's one or two star-driven, top-heavy, big budget sales, and then there's more of like a middle tier that kind of happens between Sundance and Berlin, and then some titles even, you know, go as long into the summer or the early fall to get their distribution. So, I mean, whether that's, I don't know if I have more questions than answers, unfortunately. Conversations we sort of had were like, we're really confident in our film. We're really confident in its ability to find its audience, and whether that's with like the first sale type distributor out of the blocks or whoever comes down the line, like we've already put together marketing materials. We already put together a bit of like a marketing plan, and not really going to wait until a distributor tells us, hey, this is how we think we can connect your film with your audience. What I've seen work well, especially on like the indie or like the micro budget scene, is you kind of have to be a bit like a punk rock garage band, where it's like you sort of have to take your film out and really like drum up really fun things around the distribution angle of it, so that you're not just passing off to someone, letting them go with it. Very much, it's more about community these days, where you're building up a network of friends and supporters around the film that can help you spread the word of mouth on social media or whatever. So we were sort of thinking, okay, going to the festival, knowing that, you know, we have like Rachel Sennett in our movie, but that's really helpful for these conversations. But the filmmaker, Katarina Zhu, writer, director, actor, the lead actor of our film as well. So that put us in a conversation like, hey, if we're not in that first one or two big sales, when we land wherever we land, let's have at least as much to offer to the distributor as possible, that we can sort of be the driving force on.
My film is a documentary, and it like I think I said before when I came on before everyone else came in, that I kind of felt like I wasn't sure, one, what to expect and what I should be doing as a producer, right? With my first film in Sundance. I was super grateful for all the reasons you said, Rebecca. It felt like I got into Harvard or Howard, and I was just like, wait, okay. And you know, the conversation on the ground, it's interesting because, as you said, our film won the directing award. And so everybody kept coming to us saying, oh, your film is so great. We know you're going to get a sale. And then we walked out without a sale. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, well, people are really interested. And we're like, fingers crossed, knocking on wood, holding our you know, lucky rabbit foot. I think there was a general feeling, one, there was so much happening in the world while we were there. So on some level, it was a great bubble and like a distraction, right? The California fires had just happened. So there were so many producers that I knew and other people who's lost their homes and all of their belongings. One of my first conversations with one of them was like, Alisa, I wish I even took pictures of the cards that my son wrote me. You know, so I think that there was a lot of that. And we have also been in a, I guess, a downturn in the industry for the last few years, where we have been saying that the industry has been constricting after the strikes and everything else. So I think the conversations on the ground were really trying to figure out where we are in this moment, with so much happening in the world around us, with the California fires just happening, and also with a constricting industry. But again, I'm hopeful it doesn't have to be right after Sundance, and all of these movies are so great. I'm a little bit Pollyanna. We're gonna get sales.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first year I went to Sundance was 2003. I worked in acquisitions at Lionsgate. So I've only missed a few years in the last 20 something years. And there are slower years than others. Like, it isn't always huge sales. Like, it also depends on the program and the movies that were programmed. And so it could be reflective of the market. It also could be reflective of the programming. And so it's always hard to say and pinpoint. Colleen, do you have thoughts?
Well, with Life After, we're really quite lucky. We went into Sundance with an ITVS co-production with, and therefore a guaranteed PBS broadcast, and the film will be broadcast on Independent Lens later this year. So that feels it feels like a really fortunate position to be in. over the years of making this film, we didn't necessarily know that that would be the path that would be the best one for us. But as conditions changed over the past 4 years, it did become clear that that's the best option for our film and for many films, and we definitely need to sort of start to see PBS as an anchor partner in the field for docs. So but the other thing that I'm really thinking about especially within, so I produce within the company called Multitude Films, and we're really thinking so much about, to Roger's point about like the punk garage DIY like mode of distribution. We're really thinking about how we can manage as many of the rights ourselves with our films, because we know our films best, and so building out that muscle as producers and trying to figure out how we can like sort of cut out the many middlemen when it comes, that are standing between us and our audiences, and building out that muscle and skill set, and hopefully resourcing that as well. But our plan for Life After is in the lead up to our broadcast over this year to start doing some direct distribution alongside festival run and eventized theatrical. So we're kind of like, I'm rolling up my sleeves right now and excited to dive in, but it doesn't feel like I'm waiting around for anyone to give me a green light. We're just going to do it. So,
Chester?
So yeah, we went into Sundance really nervous about ourselves. We still haven't sold just yet, but I think our plan was like just to like really think about our publicity plan and like how to like, I guess, we've been getting what is it, critic? We've been getting reviews. Yeah, reviews. That's the word I'm looking for, which has been helping. But I think the film is going to find who it's for. All the movies will. I think we've just been working close with our publicists and talking to our sales agent and keeping track of who's been watching the movie, all the good stuff, making sure. I think the best place for buyers to see movies is in the theater with the audience, so they can see how audiences are going to react to the movies, it's rare to do that, which is why I enjoy the festivals. But also, like, I think for a lot of these films to sell is going to be determined on film festivals, right? Other film festivals that come out after this, like who programs these movies and who lifts them up. Because of buyers are paying attention to that, what all of that I think is going to matter. And it's, things I've been thinking about, I think, and also think about, I did the producing lab with you as my mentor there. And I think about when you talk about the first movies that you sold, and like how you went about doing it. So I take a lot of that into, what I'm doing and building my plan. And I also got to work with A24 in my last film. So I got to like meet our distributors in different countries when traveling and, form relationships and stuff like that. So, hopefully all of that pays off.
I think, I think to Colleen's point, I think the future is that we have to take it into our own hands. And I'm going to put in the chat, I did an interview with the really amazing women who produced Union, the doc about Amazon workers unionizing that was at Sundance last year. And they went into the festival just assuming no one was going to buy their film. And so then what did they start putting in place? And by April, they had their, impact campaign moving already, right? And so, and no one ever did step up to take on it in a traditional, distribution way. And so now they've gotten to the end of the year and they have had a release of their movie because they didn't wait, right, for someone to come in. And I think this is, to me, the hard part, because it's a whole nother, you're producing a whole nother movie essentially to release your own movie, but you have the control. You can get it to who you think the movie's for and be really targeted. And so it's nice to hear you guys all kind of already have that in your head a bit. You guys have touched on a little bit already, but there was, in the commentary around this year's festival, Rich Rushfield, who writes for the Ankler, wrote that this year's Sundance was an extinction event. But I'll say it's easy for, a veteran who's always sitting on the sidelines to give commentary like that, right? He's not a filmmaker, he's there reviewing movies, talking about the festivals. And so I'd love to hear from you, each of you, of, you know, what you feel the roles festival plays, both in the life of your film. Chester, you kind of mentioned it already, but also just for the kinds of films you wanted to make and your career. You know, why is it that festivals are not extinct? Like, what is the value of them to you as a filmmaker? Alisa, maybe you want to start with this being your first Sundance.
Yeah, I would love to. So one, I will say for anybody who's new to, has never had it, I've had other festivals, but Sundance, there was so much leading up to it. I like more than TIFF, more than every other festival, Sundance had just many more steps. And I guess I'm grateful for that now, but at the time you're rushing towards like, and finishing your film in our case. And, you know, you have all of these things that you have to get them and get for the team. It was amazing to see that the minute our film was released, how many distributors, like, you know, the smaller ones all over. We had interest from Korea and all, you know, all of these foreign markets. Now the MoMA, people like places, Copenhagen, right? CPH docs. There was so much interest once we were announced as a Sundance film that I had not anticipated. A lot of the past week was just like answering general inquiries, saying, thank you so much for your inquiry. Thank you so much for your interest, looping you in with the larger team and having our sales agent say, well, yeah, this would be a great one or not. The exposure, Chester talked about the reviews, all of that, I felt like put us in a conversation that our small film that we made, you know, because it was really dear and personal to us because of the familial connection, it made it a bigger conversation. The person who was murdered, Ajika Owens, one of the last conversations she had with her mother, Pamela Dias, was she said, one day people are going to know my name. Everyone's going to know my name. This, of course, was not what she was intending. She was a vibrant mother of 4 young children. She had all of these dreams and aspirations. But this, for us, is our way to do that. And Sundance, like I said, all those resources that came before and during just felt like the reviews and everything else just felt the screenings, being able to be in a theater that first day in the library of like 500 plus people and hearing that people laugh at this point like you did, they cried at this point, they were stunned and quiet. It makes all the difference and you understand your film in a better way. I did say when I was leaving Sundance, well, 2 days ago when I had 50% voice, that if you don't love movies, if you didn't love movies when you went in, you definitely love them after. It was really great. I'm on a listserv with some other producers and something just said, Alisa, just reach out and tell people I was coming. And I said, hey, I have a film in Sundance, would love to meet some of you because since 2020, a lot of us live in a virtual world, right? And so it was just so great to hear the responses of people who are going and try to find them. Colleen and I met my first day there on a line, on like the welcome line. So I felt like it was part networking, part therapy, part, you know, part Sundance kind of connecting the dots and putting me into this bigger space. And so I'm so grateful. And I hope that was a coherent answer with no sleep.
Yeah. Colleen, do you want to pick that up from meeting her in line? Just the, you know, the value and the role festivals play in your films and your career?
Yeah, I mean, as Alisa just illuminated, Sundance remains such a, for better or worse, probably worse, like a singular experience for launching a film. And it's, I mean, I know that we're all so grateful to have that launch point because it brings so much visibility, not just to the artists, to us, to help us build careers, also to bring the issues at the heart of our films, you know, for us to the kind of platform that they often don't get, to be having like incredible rich conversations about them. It's a one of a kind experience. But I think if we're talking about festivals more generally too, like festivals have transformed so much over the past, especially 5 years. And so I've been asking myself this question so much. I'm finishing and launching another film as well this year and thinking about yeah, what I don't know, except to continue to ask myself what is the purpose of a festival, how to think about a strategy that makes sense for each film. If festivals are no longer about making sales, how do you think about the value of a premiere or the sort of key constellation of festivals that make up, you know, a launch? I think that there are still, like, I think giving this a little bit of thought ahead of time, I was like, you know, festivals still serve, Sundance in particular, but also certain festivals have a branding power to them. So even if the markets aren't necessarily where we're, you know, having quick sales, they're still valuable for getting a sales agent on board in the lead up to Sundance and to other key festivals. Um, yeah, they're the place where you want to make relationships to build your career and hopefully build a pathway to make your next project, which is never as easy as it should be. And so there's sort of this prestige element around certain festivals, but I think, like, when I think about what the most valuable purpose of a festival life for a film is, I think it's about, I want to start prioritizing filmmaker experience more, to, like, one, have a good time, be at a place where you are wanted and where your film is loved and valued, and where there are going to be the right kinds of conversations happening around your film, where the programmer doing your Q&A, like, truly knows and understands your film, and there's a rich conversation after. So yeah, I think there are still, like, balancing those things, those factors is yeah, I mean I'm in the midst of it right now, because there are some festivals, you know, festivals like Tribeca, for example, where a small thoughtful film can sort of get lost. And so how do you sort of advocate for yourself and think about what you want out of the experience, and what's gonna sort of, what are the right things to shepherd your film?
Chester, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I think, of course, the most important thing about the festivals is the tastemaking of it all, right? Them validating all of us, saying that we're the tasteful films of the year, like of the year, we're the films, the best films of 2025 to start the year off, you know? And there's other film festivals that come after. A lot of people want to last until the fall, you know, like you talk about Tribeca. Some people want Tribeca, some people want New York Film Festival, some people want DOC, NYC. And depending on what your strategy is, each of them can be used differently, right? If your film, and there's even like rooftop films where, like, some of those screenings, like Questlove's movie, played well to the people and the interactions that he needed to go off with an Oscar with, and an Emmy and a Grammy. So it's like, you know, it's like just really thinking about, like, you know, how, because of, even like you brought up earlier, Union, the BB Files. There's movies that didn't have distribution the entire time, but, you know, they made it to the Oscar shortlist even. So it's like, you know, thinking about, like, you know, who's really viewing your movie, who's like keeping track, you know, of all those people, and, like, you know, yeah, I just think it's interesting. And yes, like you said, like, yeah, but festivals, I think they're very, very important in setting the tone and the taste of everything that's happening, because of they're paying attention, the critics, the other producers, our industry and our peers are paying attention to what the festivals are programming, because of course they're, like, you know, badges of honor essentially for once producing, you know, a resume.
Yeah. Roger?
Uh, yeah, no, I think those are all really great points. I think, yeah, beyond, you know, the community angle, that it's nice to get, just for folks like myself who are coming in from New York, you know, there's not always a lot of opportunities for the industry to be so densely concentrated. We were joking before the panel started that I actually didn't see any other movie other than my own at the festival. I was just there to meet people and, like, constantly schmooze and take coffees and go to panels, because rarely do we have the opportunity in Brooklyn to see everyone at one spot from all these agencies or other financiers. But also thinking beyond, I think Colleen was mentioned the branding aspect of the festival. You know, I work primarily with, like, first or second time filmmakers. So to get into a festival like Sundance, you can kind of point to that for them as saying, oh, well, my first film got into Sundance. Like, I know that's so valuable, as they then go on to hopefully make their second or third films, as agents and financiers can look to that and say, oh, maybe that film didn't sell. Maybe that film, you know, made a little bit of ripples, or not the biggest splash, but, like, you're still at Sundance, and that's still huge. And to say that's where my first film went for that filmmaker can then lead to amazing things, or, you know, a set up film somewhere at a distributor or a studio that they want to get to by way of Sundance. So I think that that is such an amazing spotlight to point onto them, and then also for us as producers to say, we found a way with this crazy story and this small budget, and look where we landed. And what happened if we had 4 times the budget on the next project? What could we do with something like that? So positioning it as sort of a stepping stone to whatever is next.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is curation and community, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there was last year, they haven't put the numbers out yet, but on the Sundance website, they post eventually how many submissions there were. And last year there was almost 16,000. That's US features, doc, narrative, international shorts. Like, somebody has to watch all these movies. And it's not to say there aren't other good movies that didn't get into Sundance, obviously, that, but the industry needs it. And if you want to work on a bigger scale, it's like it's important to the studios to do this work and find these filmmakers and put forth films that they think are valuable. And then, just like everyone talked about, the community aspect of how do we know each other? How do we support each other? All has such great value. And, I don't think the festival will ever be extinct. It's certainly changing, which I'll ask you about in a little bit. But we have to adapt with it and we have to change with them. But I think there absolutely will always be a place for festivals on all levels. I want to ask a more practical question that somebody asked in the chat was, are you budgeting for these films in your production budget? Are you budgeting them separately? Are you raising money after you get into a festival? On my last film, I did budget $50,000 separate, which we then used at Tribeca. But Colleen, did you guys budget in it, like in your production budget, or was that a separate raise after you found out?
The way we're handling it in the budget is fundraising for festival launch, distribution, and impact as a separate budget from our production budget. So now we have those 2 numbers that we're fundraising against, continuing to fundraise against. In past years, we've had Sundance invitations be the catalyst for unlocking a lot of funding. That it was really hard and sort of unexpectedly difficult this year. It unlocked some additional funding, but not nearly as much as we hoped and could have expected from past experiences. So yes, we budgeted, like we had $80K, I think, for our Sundance launch and sort of miscellaneous launch expenses around Sundance, and then much more for the sort of distribution plans and impact plans after that.
Alisa, what did you guys do?
We're still putting it together with bubblegum and tape. Yeah, I mean, we put a small line item it's because it's so near and dear. We did raise some funds, and everything that we've done above raising those funds, we've been self-financing, including Sundance, bringing out the participants, Ajika's mom, her best friend Kim, who is my partner, is Geeta's husband's sister. Yeah, we're still trying to figure it out, because there will be other, I'm being Pollyanna, I'm being optimistic. There are going to be other film festivals in our near future.
Yeah.
And, maybe because I don't know what it is, being part practical, being whatever, I went into this festival less about the sale, much more about putting this into the world. We've been having an impact campaign that started with the family and some activists even before the film. The film kind of was created to help, at the time, Susan, the assailant, come to justice. And she hadn't even been arrested when it first happened for it's not a spoiler, for 4 or 5 days, but you'll see it in the film if you watch it. So this organically, the impact campaign and everything organically came out of this experience that we were having, that this person was still allowed to walk around. And so we're just putting our heart, soul, and everything we have into it, hopeful that it's going to make impact on communities and maybe even policy.
Mm-hmm. Chester, what was your approach?
Well, I put it in my contract that the production companies will buy the tickets. We're besides that though, we're thinking about that now. So like after leaving Sundance, you know, we are looking for people to give us grants for our impact campaign to run through you know, the Utah, I believe the Utah Film Center does our physical sponsorship and also Film Independent, but like, you know, finding people who are interested in like, you know, see the message that's in the film and believe in spreading that word, you know, especially in this time that we're in, you know, our film really, I think, talk about that and combat that and actually picks a side and not like, you know, sway to the middle, I guess.
Roger, did you guys have the money in advance, or did you have to raise more?
Ours is kind of a unique and maybe unadvisable position, but we raised money as we went. You know,
Yeah.
we shot it in August, so it was a pretty like quick turnaround. So we raised just enough money to get through production, and then we got into US in Progress, the Polish festival, which people don't know about. It's a really amazing festival, and they were giving. So we were raising money for post, but then we won a lot of post grants. So as that money was coming in, we were able to kind of reassign that budget item to then the festival when we got in also quick succession. So it all kind of happened at once this fall. But we had, you know, even when we set out, we're like, oh, it would be nice to have this much set aside for festivals, but we were really focusing on just like paying people out and like renting gear and locations and things. And then as it came together in the fall, we were able to actually put some towards the festival and even hold some back for other festivals or eventual marketing costs.
I mean, it's very common. I had a film premiere in 2015, and it was only a $500,000 movie. And so once we got into Sundance, we just went back to all of our investors. We had 11 of them. So we just asked, can everybody give us, you know, another bit of money to go? And at that point, they were so excited that they said, of course, but, you know, potentially a lesser festival, investors may not want to put up more money at that point. And so it is risky, and festivals are very, very expensive. There's a few questions in the Q&A box about sales agents, and so let's chat on that for a second. Some of the people are asking, did you have a sales agent? You know, were you working with somebody before you got into Sundance? Did you have sales agents helping you get the film submitted? I know someone asked, did you submit blindly or have relationships? But I know everyone here has some touch point to Sundance, and so that is also, you know, added value. But at what stage did you start working with sales agents? You know, what has that relationship been like through the festival? Some people really like working with them. Some people find that they end up picking up a lot of that work as a producer on their own. Colleen, do you want to talk about your sales agent experience?
Sure. So because we have the ITVS deal and US broadcast rights already taken, it didn't make sense to work with a US sales agent, and I sort of really had the sort of appetite to manage the US rights ourselves. So we brought on an international sales agent, Together Films, who are incredible and like the best sales agent experience I've ever had. And so they'll do international sales as well as UK theatrical, and their team is just fantastic. So it's been a great experience so far, and they bring such an ethos and ethics that I at Multitude Films that feel very familiar to us in our practice as producers, and they're like the producers of sales agents. I think they're really it's been fantastic to work with them so far. So I'm like very energized by that relationship right now.
I will jump in. This is where I think festivals really help too. The minute it was announced that we were in Sundance, we got all of the people reaching out to us. And so we ended up going with Cinetic, which is a big one and quite popular. And so, you know, we're the small fish. And so there's been a lot of trying to have the conversations, a lot of molding, understanding too. We're a team of color. So that's the other part, right? There are certain things that we also want for us and for distribution and other festivals and audiences because of our backgrounds. And so just really having all of the conversations with the sales agents. And they've been a great guiding force. I also think that they've done it so much. You know, sometimes you you value your film, etc., but you don't know how to value it
Mm.
monetarily, especially in this new climate. So it's great to have partners that have been there before. And I think, you know, we were really, the one thing that was really important to me going into this call, well, two things. One was theatrical for this film, because you really should see it with other people. But the other was like retention of IP, which, and how do we navigate like licensing versus being bought straight out, and having those conversations, which is not always big on the doc side. And it was interesting when I brought that up with the sales agent, they were saying that, Alisa, oh my goodness, it's so interesting because doc people don't usually bring that up. And we're seeing nowadays that a lot of people are thinking about it, right? In a way that they hadn't before.
Mhm. Chester, are you guys working with a sales agent?
Yes, and you're gonna sell your movie. John's lost his fab. But yes, we come, Elegance and I, our company is Freedom Principle by WME. So Maggie Pisacani, she is a partner at the WME branch in New York, but in the doc branch. But yeah, she's our sale agent. But anything that like, and again, when we got into Sundance, like Alisa said, a bunch of people reached out to sell our film, but everything that we work on, Maggie is like watching it, you know, getting the temperature for it. She's like figuring out who needs to see it, who's every week from WME, we get a producer's packet that shows us everybody's what are they looking for, their mandates from each company. So, you know, I'm going over that, but she's also going over that. And I'm just like, you know, pinging her like, oh, did you, you know, add this person or that person, you know, all that type of stuff. But yes, but anything that we do, we come built in with the WME, and then we'll add people with that. Yeah. With
Roger?
her.
We're also working with WME, with Jonah Rabb over there, who was actually really helpful, even from production financing standpoint. He helped connect us with some investor that brought, as our largest investor, he was able to connect us with, which was super helpful. And then also with Utopia for international sales. So they both were on board at the script phase, helping even like give notes or give feedback. We invited them to give some feedback as well. And then, yeah, then once we got in, everyone else hits you up. And that's when we brought WME on officially to kind of repay some of Jonah's loyalty for us when we didn't even have a contract. He was like, oh, like, I like this project. I think this person would be a great fit. And he sort of played matchmaker for us. So we were like, all right, we want to trust you with it and be the one running forward. Even now, like everyone's calling us. It's like, no, you're part of the team, and sort of repaying that. But yeah, they've done a great job. And sort of like Jester said, they're great at sort of giving temperature checks and helping even just with some strategy, and with other festivals now that we're getting hit up for those, just having another trusted, valued voice in the team is so valuable.
And in our case too, Cinetic also has a PR arm.
Yes.
And so like having them reach out, at first we're like, what's happening? Where our name is nowhere. But the week right before, they ramped it up. And then all of a sudden we're like, wait, people know the name of our film. And it was wonderful in that regard, because we hadn't, you know, we went from being in a dark room crying, you know, together the week before, to getting on the plane, going to Sundance, and then having the world know about the film. So the PR, the publicity aspect that also comes generally with Sundance and a distributor is also invaluable.
Yeah, for me, it's like a love-hate relationship. And you know, you're working on this film for so long, and you know it better than anybody, and then all of a sudden these people swoop in, and now they know it better than anybody, and they're running point, and they're like, it's a very abrupt passing of the baton, I feel like, in the work that producers do, that if you've not had it, it really hits in a way that is hard. But the thing is there's no way the biggest thing that they're most important for to me is that they stay on top of who's doing what, as Chester was saying. Like, every company's mandate these days changes like every 3 months. And it's their job to know exactly who those mandates are, what those mandates are. They're talking to the distributors all the time, whereas producers, we're busy making our movies. And so that's really the value they bring. It's not just having those relationships, but knowing this company is looking for a movie like yours right now, or they used to do a movie like yours and now they're not. And that's, you know, for agents across the board, whether it's in sales or on the lit side, you know, it's just invaluable to have that kind of information.
And also, Rebecca, you know, they put them in the room at your premiere. Like,
Yes.
right. So what you're saying is that they know who is wants what, and they also put them in the room. So there are people that I kind of knew peripherally, and after my film, they're like holding me, weeping, men and women, and I'm like, I wasn't prepared for that. And they're just, you know, they're a distributor, and you're like, oh, well, I hope that means something. They
Yeah.
they put the right people in the room. Like the Netflix film team was right in front of me and my children, you know, so it's really, and they get to hear, they put them in the room to hear it with an audience.
Yep.
That's the other part. And they manage getting them the tickets and all of that stuff, that just getting us in the room was hard enough for every screening, much less having to think about all the distributors and all the other people that needed to be in the room.
And it's hard because everyone at Netflix could love your movie and then they pass like that because it doesn't fit their mandate, but they love the movie. Chester,
I was gonna add that, like, also besides the mandate, you should know like where other movies are that exist like yours, right? Like, for instance, automatically, I knew Netflix was probably not going to buy our movie because they have a film about Kaminsky Park redeeming the guy who owned the stadium that let them have the event. So it's like, I'm assuming, okay, since they have that, why would they buy our movie? You know? But it's like knowing that as well.
Yeah, they hold all the information.
Yeah, all the movies that are like, you know, in the marketplace like yours.
Yeah, and
somebody in the chat asked for, oh, sorry, go ahead, Alisa.
I was gonna say, and sometimes you have this thought, right? Because you grow up in this industry and you're like, oh, I want these people. And they're like, no, that's not the right, that's not the right match for you. You said you wanted A, B, and C. If you really want that, and we agree that it's the right thing for you, then stop chasing that person.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, particularly for docs, you know, I've heard a lot of stories from producers of, you think you want this big sale, but a lot of the big distributors don't want to do impact campaigns, but that's really important to you. And so how do you then pick apart, you know, having a big sale versus a smaller distributor who actually is going to meet the goals that you want to meet with your film?
Indeed.
Also, producers, carve out your educational rights for your films, especially documentaries, because if you can hire an assistant to call every college and every library in the country to get your film sold to them, you know, and yeah, that's easy money.
Colleen, do you want to, somebody's asking what is an impact campaign? So when Chester says carve out those rights, do you want to give a quick 101 on what that means?
Sure. So an impact campaign can look like a lot of different things, but it's something that many documentary teams and producers want to, you know, think about from the earliest stages of making a doc, which is what change do we hope to see in the world based on this film's narrative change power? Do we want to change the conversation about XYZ issue? Do we want to achieve some policy change? It could be any number of things. That what it looks like starts from the very beginning. We make films within, you know, from and within communities and movements, and so that looks like beginning in how we cast and research and do production, and then the bulk of it really comes, you know, when most people say impact campaign, that means the part of the film's distribution life where it is being shown in non-theatrical, often non-theatrical settings within communities, at libraries, some of the places that I think Chester was mentioning, where the film can spark conversations and change in different settings. So yeah, Chester's point to carving out educational rights and if possible non-theatrical rights, so that you can have the ability to screen your film in settings like community organizations and libraries and things like that is really important to many producers, and also a source of revenue sometimes. So
Rebecca, one of the most recognized impact campaigns that I think most people don't even know was an impact campaign was for An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore's film. Everyone knows the words climate change. Even if you didn't see it, you don't know how you know it, but that's because there was an educational component in the campaign that went along with the film, and you saw snippets of that PowerPoint that he was doing in the film.
Yep, that's a really good. I need to write that down when I teach. That's a good. It's a good one to reference. We are quickly running out of time, as usual. When I talk to producers, I can talk to you guys forever. I want to touch, kind of like combine my kind of last question was the question somebody asked. So, I'm sure every conversation you had at Sundance included the move that Sundance is potentially making for 2027. If people watching don't know, they've announced that they're going to be moving, and they're down to Salt Lake City, Boulder, and Cincinnati. And there's been commentary, everybody writing about it. Everyone has different opinions. As someone who's been going forever, I'm ready for a change. I think Park City is expensive and it's hard and it's small. And I wrote a piece with producer Megan Gilbride 2 years ago about just like, how do we reimagine Sundance to bring it to more people, which I think if we want to have indie film thriving should be the goal for all of us, is how do we get it to the masses, right? And I'm rooting for Cincinnati. As someone who's in Detroit, I'm a Midwest girl, and I've spent a lot of time there, and I think it would really thrive in a city. But I'm curious, because I think the people that are really nostalgic about keeping in Salt Lake City are the ones that have gone so many times, and but where are the new audiences? Where's the future? And so and also what, somebody asked, like, what can festivals be doing to better service films and filmmakers? And I think this move, to me, is going to answer that. Like, is Sundance really going to rise to the occasion to answer what filmmakers need? And so would love to hear from you, your thoughts on that and how festivals do that. And if you had any particular opinions on Sundance 2027 and on the future. Chester?
Yeah, I do think, since Sundance has been there so long, there's a lot of infrastructure there. And there's a lot of people who finance movies, like a lot of those names you see at the end of Sundance's institutes financing. They have houses in Utah. Yeah. And, I do think that matters, because I wonder how many people in Cincinnati is going to back the Sundance Institute going into Cincinnati, and I think that I think Park City would be great because they have better food and the altitude isn't as bad at the bottom of the hill, So, but it does feel like it's going to be like a inverse, right? Like everybody's going to be down in Salt Lake City for the festival and go up to Park City for like special events, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll flip it, go skiing.
Yeah. And also Salt Lake City is also a hub airport. So direct flights and all that type of stuff. Cincinnati doesn't have that. Only Detroit does, though. Detroit is a hub city, but not Cincinnati.
Detroit, the city of Detroit no longer has a movie theater. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a topic for another conversation.
Yeah. And other film festivals are important because Cincinnati does have an Oscar qualifying festival too there. And I think that Sundance being there will overshadow that festival. So,
Roger?
Yeah, I guess it kind of speaks to what is like a scary trend of like indie film being a thing of like privilege, or only something that like rich people can kind of get involved in, and that like if it becomes a rich person's plaything, that's a really dangerous fact that I think we have to kind of reckon with. And that if you host a festival in one of the most exclusive, expensive cities in the world, or in the country at least, you're kind of indicating a certain thing towards an audience that's exclusive, that's hard to get to, that I think if indie film is going to thrive or come back up from where it feels now, like the Extinction event you mentioned, I think it just needs to have a bigger, more accepting infrastructure to it. And how can we get, even like, for instance, like we didn't have a lot of money for a big after party. So we had like a really small restaurant, and we had to turn like hundreds of people away. It was like, oh, like we want, and like the film, just from that, I was trying not to like get too down on it, but just for the pure infrastructure, we had to turn away buyers from our party. And I was like, oh no, like, so I don't care where we go, like, but as long as it's bigger and better venues that we can accommodate with less money, like that is what, and I think it's a good microcosm of the industry. It's like, how do you get more people in? How do you not have someone bounce into a mean security person and that's how they interact with your film? It's like, no, we need to welcome them in. We need to make it easier for them to get there. I mean, easier for films to be made and easier for films to be seen. So whatever city it goes to, as long as they can sort of check those boxes, I'm happy with that.
Cincinnati has lots of big breweries.
Perfect.
That's what I figured. So sounds great.
Colleen?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I'll leave that to others to sort out. But I think, like what Roger, you're speaking about, accessibility on so many levels, including physical accessibility. This was Life After is a disabled director-led film, and we had At one point, we were going to bring a couple disabled participants out to participate, and it was, I mean, it's a logistical hell and a financial hell too. It's like the reason we had to raise $80,000 to launch the film at Sundance was because Park City is just incredibly inaccessible. So yeah, I think accessibility to indie film for wider audiences and to to everyone is what I hope is the outcome.
Well,
but I don't think
your director's already done a lot of advocacy at Sundance, and it's still a struggle, like even with advancements and improvements over the years, it's still a hard place to navigate.
Yeah, you can't rebuild the city. Like,
right.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be, I don't, yeah, for me, I think it's between Salt Lake and Cincinnati. I don't know about Boulder.
Boulder's just as expensive.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's mountainous. Sorry, just to add to what Colleen said, like the accessibility, I was really kind of sad. I was in a group chat before the festival. A lot of first timers asking like, "Oh, what should I wear? What should I?" And then someone was in a wheelchair and asking like, "Oh, like how will it be for me to get around?" And people had to be like, "Hey, like it actually is going to be like really tough. It's like a 45-degree hail. The weather is terrible." And someone even chimed in and was like, "Maybe like this is not the festival for you," or something like kind of blunt. And I was like, what a sad fact that just merely from an infrastructure, logistical, like geographical perspective, we're eliminating an entire demographic that we're supposed to be welcoming. And we're spotlighting films about certain parts of our communities that can't even attend or can't even like logistically Park City shut down Main Street because of the New Orleans incident, But then people were like, "Oh, but like my Accessoride couldn't drop me off for it," and then it was just all these other logistical things that, that I think if again beyond bigger breweries, maybe flat would be another good criteria.
It's funny because a lot of the people, a lot of the people that are really nostalgic are the people that have been going for 30 years who are now a bit older and have been writing about the altitude at an older age is hard. And I have an interview with Zoe Worth, who was nominated for the Producers Award. She produced Thelma, that I'll publish in a few weeks. But in the interview, she talked specifically about helping June Squibb get around Park City and accessibility as an older woman and what went into that. So absolutely, yeah. Alisa?
Well, everybody said everything they had to say about the move, but what I will say is that ticket prices, if we're talking about accessibility, both online and there, I think there should be concessions made because, again, we're talking about trying to give us more access to films and independent films. And if we all do not want this to be seen as, a rich person's game, then no matter where it is, everything has been said. I think it's giving more people access to it. One of the biggest highlights was going to Salt Lake City and being, there's screenings that most of them are in Park City, but then you have that one or two, I don't know, depending on the team at Salt Lake City, and being with people who are ticket buyers that are not in the industry and hearing their feedback and getting their questions during the Q&A. Those are the most insightful, and those are the most profound. And that experience was really moving. The mom that I mentioned before, Pamela, she had done all the other Q&As, but that was the one that made her break down because of how insightful those questions were. And they really cared about the people behind the story so much. And so, I think it's accessibility in terms of pricing across the board, no matter where it goes.
I will say I asked my students if they were going to watch any online films, and they all said no because it was too expensive. And so, but with that note, I will say I'm going to put in the chat in case if you don't have the Sundance newsletter coming to your inbox, there was an email this morning. There's still online tickets. There's a 20% off discount. If you want to watch something, it's through the end of day tomorrow. But if there's some films, there's a code for 20% off. I just put in the chat for everybody. Well, is there anyone have any last thoughts before we wrap up? This has been a really wonderful conversation. Roger?
No, I just want to say thank you, Rebecca. Also, someone asked for our Instagram, so I'll always drop mine in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from community, from producing and not going to film school, just like knowledge sharing, reaching out to each other, being like, hey, what the hell does this mean? Or you haven't worked with this person. So, you know, your community of producers, especially, which Rebecca, you do such a great job of fostering, is super important. So feel free to reach out, Open Door Policy. Would love to talk and also learn from you all. So thank you for having us, Rebecca. And it's really nice chatting with the rest of you panelists as well.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you all.
Welcome. Thank you for coming at the very end of the festival. I know you're tired. Great work, and we're all excited to see your movies. So thanks, everyone.
Colleen, feel better.
Feel better.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Rest well, everyone. Bye.
So much.